Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for this webinar on the CIMA Objectives Tests, how to prepare and what to consider, with Chris from CIMA Student Study Support. Before I hand over to Chris, there are a few points I would like to make. To minimise disruption, you have all been automatically muted. If you have any questions, please enter them into the questions box, as there will be a short Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Following this session, you'll be sent a copy of the webinar recording. Without further ado, I'll hand you over to Chris.
Hello there, everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time to tune into this. It's called A Guide to Achieving Exam Success, and what I'm going to be doing today is just going through some hints and tips, just some information as to what you can do to actually help your CIMA journey be more smooth, to help you to prepare for your first exam, and also to help prepare you for any potential resits if that is indeed what needs to happen. Okay, so there will be an opportunity for questions at the end, and as Kelly has already made clear, there will be a recording of this available after the event. So without further ado, we'll get started. So this is just to give you an idea of what to expect in today's session. We're going to be covering personalised guidance, because that's what the Student Study Support team is all about. What are the CIMA exams? So our Certificate of Business Accounting and our professional qualification. Syllabus Transition, because we have recently had some reformation to our syllabus, and you may find yourself in a position where you've done exams under our 2015 syllabus, but now you find that you have to complete a level under the revised syllabus. So it's just to give you some help, hints and tips with that. Then, most important of all, is how to study for the exams. What can you do to actually help yourself along? What would be the best way for you to study? And remember, the key point here is that everyone is different. Everyone retains information in a different way. Everyone studies in a different way. So I will go through the options with you. Then, overcoming hurdles. May sound self-explanatory, but in terms of first-time nerves, if it's your first exam, or if it's the consternation you feel when you're having to do a resit. Then it's preparing for your first exam. Again, giving you the advice that you need in order to get prepared for that and in order to actually progress through that. Then we have advice for someone who is in a position where they have to do a resit, so they have to reattempt an exam. Finally, the exam scheduling process itself. How do you do it? What are the options available to you? So, just to tell you a little bit about Student Study Support. The whole point of Student Study Support is to give you, the individual student, personalised guidance that's tailored to your particular situation. We could have 4 different people attempting the same exam, for example, our recently revised E1 exam, all on the same day, and you may actually find yourself in a situation where 4 of you all pass together, hopefully, or it could be that the result is not quite what's expected, and you will all find that you have different feedback, different results. So what the Student Study Support wing of CIMA actually is trying to do here is to tailor our support to your individual needs. So bearing the proficiencies and non-proficient that you will actually see as a part of the feedback that you get once you complete your exams, and also the different ways that you can overcome any concerns that you have, and potentially look towards like booking a resit, but with new information, looking at things in a different way perhaps, and utilizing other resources that you may not know were there. So that's what the Student Study Support team does. Also, this would apply to students who have never taken an exam before. It could be that you've booked an exam with us and quite frankly, you just feel that you just don't know where to begin. So again, this is intended to actually give you some help and some guidance with that. And again, it would be on a personalized basis. Obviously, in this particular webinar, the information that would be provided to you, the assistance that would be there, will be hints and tips that can be used on a broader basis. But for anyone that would like to actually take this further and would like a personalised one-to-one with student study support, the information for that will be available a little later on. So just to summarise, student study support, a helpful contact point for students who are taking exams for the first time or working their way through the exams in our syllabus, offering alternatives, providing encouragement and enriching awareness. Another thing to just be very clear on here is that support is continuous. It's not simply a one email or one phone call exercise. The point is to get an ongoing relationship going there, almost as someone who's there to guide you and to actually help you through the syllabus. Clarification is important as well in terms of the feedback that you receive from our exams, whether you're taking our certificate level or our professional level. It's good to be able to understand what it is that you're reading. Sometimes, and this is feedback that we've actually had from students, it can be a little ambiguous. So it's there to try and help provide that extra help and clarity for you. Another thing that's quite important is accessibility. The student study support function actually has a dedicated telephone line and email address, so there'll be no queues, there'll be no waiting to get through. You'll actually be able to liaise directly with student study support, and we'll be able to actually help you with your ongoing CIMA journey. Without further ado, and the curtains pulled back there, to reveal our certificate in business accounting. Now, for those of you who have already progressed through our syllabus and are very familiar with this, I would just ask you for just to bear with us here, because you'll obviously be familiar with this. But for those of you who are new to our syllabus, this is just to let you know the first level of CIMA. So the CIMA qualification is split into 4 levels: certificate, operational, management and strategic respectively. This is the first level, the certificate level. You need to be at least 16 years of age in order to do these exams. The exams consist of 4 two-hour objective tests that you can take in any order. You can take these exams throughout the year. It's not restricted to particular seasons or 2 or 3 times a year. In terms of how long it takes, one of the things we actually pride ourselves on is our flexibility. You can take as long as you like to complete the syllabus. There is no time imposition from our perspective. However, whilst holding down a full-time job, and you may have other responsibilities such as family concerns, etc., family responsibilities, which is certainly a full-time job in itself, then sometimes it can be very difficult to get the right balance between your studies, your work, and a social life, quite frankly. So we would say that it takes about a year on average, but between a year to 18 months to complete the entire certificate level at a relaxed pace, whilst holding down these other responsibilities. But please be aware it can be done in a much quicker period of time than that, or longer, depending on your personal needs and requirements. The designation that you will actually receive will be CIMA, sorry, beg your pardon, it will be CIMA Cert VA, and there is no requirement to have any previous work experience in order to sit the Certificate of Business Accounting. As I've already stated, you just need to be at least 16 years of age. It would also be helpful as well if you had a good grasp of English language and basic mathematics. You do not need to know anything about accounting, either management or financial, because you will be taught everything from scratch. The certificate level exams, as I say, they are 2 hours in length each. You can actually take the exams in any order of your choosing. In terms of how you would study for these actual exams, we will actually get to that a little later on in this webinar. We'll move now on to the professional qualification. So, as I previously stated, our syllabus is split into 4 levels, so certificate, operational, management and strategic respectively. The Certificate of Business Accounting is actually a qualification in its own merit, as well as being the first level of the main syllabus. So this is just to show you the other exams in our syllabus: the operational level, the management level and the strategic level at the top there. Now, in terms of entry requirements, you do need to have completed our certificate level in order to go on to the first rung of the syllabus ladder, the professional syllabus ladder, which is our operational level. Now, it doesn't mean that if you haven't completed the certificate level, then there is another way around this. We will consider any qualifications from degree level or higher, or any qualifications that you've done with another IFAC body. That's the International Federation of Accountants. So it might be the AAT, for example, it might be with ACCA. If you've passed modules with them, you could be exempted from our Certificate of Business Accounting, and therefore you can go through to our professional level qualification. If you have an MBA or a Master's in Accounting, or if you have a full ACCA, there are other alternatives there. We have 3 different gateways, as they're called: the Master's Gateway, the Professional Gateway, and the Management Accountant Gateway, where with these set qualifications, you can actually leapfrog whole sections of the syllabus and then come in later on at our management level. Just so that you're aware, these exams are an hour and a half long each. You can take them at any time. Again, the objective tests there that you can actually see, the E1, the P1, the F1, etc. However, just consider that once you've taken these exams, you then have to complete the 4th exam in the level. Now, the 4th exam in each of these levels is called a case study. It's basically a microcosm of the key points, the most essential criteria that you would actually cover as a part of those objective tests. The case studies are slightly more restrictive. You can only take them in set periods 4 times a year. The easiest way to remember is in line with the seasons. So the winter session would be in February, the spring session would be in May, the summer session would be in August, and then lastly the autumn session would be in November. These exams are 3 hours in length, and you need to just consider this. All of our other exams, so all of our objective tests, they are actually marked through the system because these are all computer-based exams. And what actually happens then is that you will actually provisional mark on the day, and the final mark will be updated on your MySEMA account within 48 hours. Please consider though that with the 3 case studies, which I'm just pointing out to you here, so the operational case study exam, the management case study exam, the strategic level exam, these are actually marked by official markers, so by people, for want of better parlance. And it will take up to 6 weeks for you to get the results of those. Now, one other factor here that's important for you to bear in mind is that you are rewarded for your efforts as you progress through the syllabus. Once you complete our operational level, you actually are awarded a diploma in management accounting, which has universal recognition, and you can use the designation SEMA Dip MA after your name. With our management level, it's a very similar scenario. So what that means is that you will actually be able to put SEMA ADV Dip MA after your name, which is SEMA Advanced Diploma in Management Accounting. If you decide to go on and complete our strategic level, there isn't actually a set qualification certificate just for completing the strategic level, because the relevance there is once you complete the case study of that level, you then submit your practical experience requirement and go on to apply for full membership of the institute. That is when you will receive 2 qualification certificates and designations, the prestigious CGMA designation and the time-honoured ACMA designation. I just wanted to take a little longer and deliberately pause just on this page a little while, because the previous slide that we saw, which was our Certificate of Business Accounting, that has remained consistent since its most recent revision 2 years ago. However, our professional qualification, which consists of the operational management and strategic levels, has only recently been reformed. In fact, it's only gone live since the beginning of November. What I'm showing you here is the current syllabus, so the updated one, the 2019 syllabus. One thing that we always pride ourselves on at SEMA is having a sense of awareness as to what's going on in the wider business community, the wider world. And whilst we cherish our traditions and the fact that CIMA itself has been running now for just over 100 years. We do also appreciate the importance of remaining contemporary and making sure that our students and members are armed with the best skills to take on and make a success of the current business environment. The only way we can do that is to make sure our syllabus is regularly reviewed, and at times it does need to be updated, such as what has happened here. One last point I'd like to make on these exams is that you can do the objective tests, so the E1, the P1, the F1 for instance, in any order of your choosing. However, the case study exam will always come last. You cannot go straight to the case study exam. You would need to either have exemptions from these exams below, or alternatively, you would need to be exempted from the entire level. Yeah, so you can't do the case study unless you've done these three first, but the three objective tests within each level, once you can be done in any order of your preference. Okay, we're next coming on to the transition of our 2019 syllabus. Now, as I say, this is very important because one thing that has become quite apparent in terms of conversations that I've been having with students who are working through the syllabus is they have found themselves in a position whereby they've completed certain exams under our previous syllabus, but now find that they have actually got to complete the level under the revised syllabus. This can be difficult because, especially when it means coming to the case study, because it's then a case of, well, how much do I need to revise again? What do I not need to revise again? And then, of course, there's the cost factor to consider, because studying for the syllabus is not always affordable. There are certain options that are more affordable than others. Now, what I would like to just add on this point is that we actually have some very helpful transition guides. These provide an overview of each exam under the current qualification syllabus, and they also identify the key differences between the previous syllabus and the current syllabus. I have deliberately put a link on there which you can hopefully all see, the https planner.cimagglobal.com/articles/transition-guides, because if you actually go online and not now obviously, but at a time later at your convenience, you will actually be able to see the transition guides there, and they will give you a good idea actually of what changes have actually occurred within the different modules that make up our syllabus. Some of them have been like the E1, for example, has actually been changed quite considerably. It was organizational management, it's now managing finance in a digital world. Others, though, have had very little alteration at all because it just wasn't necessary. You're not expected, and let me be very clear on this point, you are not expected to go through that page and put that together. No one is assuming that you're going to necessarily have the time to do all that. What you can do, though, and something that I can certainly arrange for you, is we can actually have a telephone discussion about this, and when a plan is put together for you, a tailored study plan to help you, whether it's your first exam that you're taking or indeed a resit, we can actually look at what's most relevant to your situation, and then that way you'll be able to focus on the correct transition information and the correct exam blueprints. That in itself is also something that's quite helpful. The revised syllabus actually features detailed blueprints now for each exam, and that will give you a good indicator of what to prepare for and what to look out for in terms of the exams themselves. How much time you can dedicate to one particular area, how much time you would dedicate to something else. But again, we will have more on that just a little bit later. Choosing the right study method. Now, one of the things that is absolutely essential when it comes to studying CIMA is what study method do you choose? This applies whether you are booking an exam for the first time, it applies whether you are undertaking a resit. This cannot be underestimated enough. Now, there are three different ways that you can study with CIMA. You can study with a tuition provider, you can study online with cimastudy.com, or you can study through our textbooks. Just to give you some background here, I actually used to work in our customer service department, our UK contact centre, for quite some time, and I've spoken to hundreds of students over the never mind over the years, in a matter of months, even hundreds and hundreds of them. And based on the feedback that they have actually provided, and so remember, these are people that are going through the CIMA journey as you are, and also based in terms of meetings with the people that actually frame our syllabus, put it together. Let's be clear, there is no best way to study CIMA. We deliberately offer 3 different study methods because everyone studies in a different way. Everyone retains information in a different way, and that is absolutely essential. It doesn't matter what your friend is doing. It doesn't matter what a colleague has put forward, because they might study in a particular way. They can retain information that way, and they can pass an exam that way. You, however, may choose an alternative study method, or you might choose the same method as them, and it may not be successful. One thing that we will cover again a little later, but which I will touch upon now, is if you find yourself in a position where you are attempting an exam and have had repeat fails, for instance, one of the key causes of this could be because the study, not that you're not passionate about learning and that you're not showing the drive and tenacity to actually pick up the textbook or to watch what's happening on the CIMA study module. It's just that the information just isn't coming through. And that's the key point. You need to make sure that the study method is right for you. So just to give you a bit more information on that, when it says you can study with a tuition provider, it could, for instance, be with Kaplan or BPP or First Intuition. There are even some universities that actually run CIMA on a part-time basis. For those of you taking these exams for the first time, I just want to go into this a little more. So with a tuition provider would generally mean that you go into a conventional classroom environment, you'll be sat there and you'll have a class as you would any other subject. Now, there are certain benefits with that, because of course you can bounce ideas off your peers. You've got a teacher that's there that can actually help with any questions you have. You get the most study support in that way from a conventional study method. However, and this is something to consider, especially if you are self-funding, going through a classroom environment is massively more expensive. We're not talking a difference of a few pounds here and there. It can often be hundreds and hundreds of pounds more expensive for each module you're studying. Yes, you get a full comprehensive support. Again, you have a teacher that you can liaise with, etc. But it isn't always an option that people can afford. So do just consider that the pro of it is that you have a conventional learning environment, you have a teacher, etc. But just bear in mind, you do have to pay that bit extra for it. Now, the second way that you would study, and this is one that's become increasingly popular over recent years, is CIMAstudy.com. So CIMAstudy.com is our official online platform. It's a mixture of tests, games, interactive webinars. It's basically all the content that you would need to pass a particular exam, but presented to you in a way that's not as dry as a textbook. It's interactive. Arguably, it's a more contemporary way to study. If you want to actually get a good idea about how that would work, you can certainly visit CIMA Study. It's www.cimastudy.com, and you can actually try a very handy practice test. It's an overview. It's like a free demonstration, and I would always recommend that before you buy with anything like that. Now, in terms of support and costs, this method of study will not be anywhere near the cost of a tuition provider, but it won't be as cheap as the textbook option. In terms of support, you do have the support of a teacher that you can liaise with by email. That's if you go for the CIMAstudy.com standard version. If you decide to go for the prime version, there will actually be a teacher that you can liaise with by telephone as well. So you do get some additional support there, though not quite as much as you would with a tuition provider. The third and final way that you can study with us is with our textbooks. This is arguably the most common way to study. The textbooks are, by definition of them being a book, they're the most flexible way to study. You don't need to be logged into a laptop. You don't have to go to a classroom that might be several towns away, whatever the case may be. All the information you need to pass the relevant exam, the criteria will be in the textbook. You won't be asked questions in your exam that the criteria for that is not somewhere in the textbook, provided especially that you have the most relevant textbook, the most up-to-date one. If you're using an older textbook, then there are ways that we can actually help with that. The student study support team has got some hints and tips to actually help with that. It could be a case of you using it to cover most of the criteria that hasn't changed. And then there are some blueprints and some transition information we can give you on what the different information will be in there as a result of the reform. So basically it's saying, well, this particular exam, for example, is 90% the same. So you can use your old textbook for that because that's still relevant. The 10% difference, we can actually guide you to the blueprints, we can guide you to the transition tool, so you can actually learn the difference yourself, and therefore you won't be at a disadvantage in the actual exams. Our policy with this is we would always recommend that you have the most up-to-date information. That's the only way that you're going to ensure in every respect possible that everything you're studying is relevant to the exams that you're doing. But at least this way, especially if you're in a situation where you may have a lot of outgoings, it might be a case of it's not always affordable to study. These are other options that you have that can help you. Now, what can prevent you from booking your exam, whether it's your first exam or whether it's a resit? Perhaps it's apathy. Perhaps it's a case of, I've just got so much going on at the moment that the last thing I want to do is go home, click open a laptop and start studying for an accounting exam. Another thing could be a lack of confidence. Something I personally hear a lot of in student study support is, oh, I just don't think I'm up to the standard of these exams. That's the first thing I would say to that is try not to ever feel that way. As long as you have got the right drive, you're prepared to put the hard work in, then there is no reason why you shouldn't have a successful journey through our syllabus. Another thing that's very common is work-life balance not achieved. Now, for those of you that may not be aware of this, the UK qualifications regulatory framework actually acknowledges the full CIMA qualification as being a level 7, which is the equivalent of a master's degree. These exams are not easy. Now, the reason I'm quoting this to you is because sometimes getting the right level, the right work-life balance is simply impossible. And it can be a case sometimes of having to reschedule exams. Fortunately, they're very flexible, particularly the objective test, so you do have that option. And it might be a case of just looking at your personal scenario and thinking, can I actually give adequate study time to this? I feel myself particularly in a position to make this comment because I was actually, and this is something I'm more than happy to share, I actually did my degree as a mature student. I didn't do a degree straight after college, straight into work, but it wasn't actually until much later, at least 15 years after I'd left college, that I actually studied my degree. I actually did it long distance. I was trying to hold down a full-time job at the time and trying to get a social life as well, and getting that balance and then studying in the evening and going to classes, it just did not, it was very difficult. It requires a great deal of focus, a great deal of flexibility, and sometimes it's just not always possible. Never feel that you have failed personally because you just haven't had enough time to study. The reality is you've simply prioritized other things, which are likely in most cases going to be more important. In my case, I actually failed an exam 1 year and then I had to wait a quarter, so I had to wait until the spring of the next year in order to do the resit. So it can be very heartbreaking. It can be very despondent when you don't pass an exam, especially when you do feel that you've studied very hard for it. Okay? So never feel that you're not good enough for it. It can often just be a case of life just gets in the way, especially if you have other priorities. Affordability is another factor here. As I've said, the the great thing about our syllabus, and this is something which I think is absolutely fantastic, is it is essentially a pay-as-you-go qualification. You would register as a student first, you then book, you then apply for, if applicable, exemptions. Even they're free now. And then once you've got that in place, you begin your studies. Once you've studied, you book your exam, and then you just repeat the process. In effect, you just move on. So the way to look at it is preparation, study, book the exam, and then you just carry on throughout the syllabus. That's the great thing about it being a pay-as-you-go qualification. You can spread the cost and therefore make it more convenient for you. So although when you initially look at some of the exams, you might think, oh, that's a bit dear, or I really feel that I would like to study through a tuition provider because I don't feel comfortable enough studying through a textbook or studying online. That's fine. There's not an issue. You can study at your own pace. Obviously, if you go through a tuition provider, they will let you know when the classes will be, and it goes without saying that you will have to make an effort to attend those, or you could find yourself at a disadvantage in terms of how much you're learning and picking in. But especially if you go for the self-study options like the textbook and the SEMA study, obviously you can just utilize those as and when it's convenient for you, and you can just buy them again as you proceed. This is not a qualification where you sort of pay £7,000 up front and then within 3 years you've hopefully achieved it. No, you spread this out and make it work for you. Lack of understanding can also be very important here. Lack of understanding in terms of what the questions and what's actually being asked about you. And that also leads in to the next point, which is when you're overwhelmed by the syllabus. If you're overwhelmed by the syllabus, the situation is that you look at it, you just think it's just too much. And some of our exams, when you think of the topics that we cover, governance and law, economics, management accounting, financial accounting, there's a lot in there that can be, it can initially seem a huge amount. So what I would suggest on that point is just take each step at a time. Look at each exam, read what's required of that, and once you have an understanding, only then go down the path of booking the exam and heading towards that objective. Remember, there are always people here that can help you. The student study support team will be able to give you personalized guidance about that. One other point that's just on here is you may find that you're going in a different direction, because you might say, well, I think SEMA would be a better qualification for business. And of course, the great thing about the SEMA qualification, as you no doubt already know, is that with our sister company, the AICPA, we formed the association, and we are actually the world's largest accounting company now. But it may be a case that you think, I want to go more away from forecasting, business strategy, preparing accounts, and I want to head more towards auditing, taxation, the extrapolations of finance, and therefore this is no longer really relevant for me. That's absolutely fine, but that again can have that impact in the sense that you're not quite sure what direction you want to go in. Remember that these exams will get you a qualification that's very practical, a qualification that will actually get you a job in the larger business community. Whether you go on to be a management accountant, whether you go on to work in IT, whether you go on to work as a human resources manager, we have people that have studied our exams and our qualification that have actually been able to go into these fields as a result of the skills that they've learned, the transferable skills they've learned from working through these exams. So these exams, there's no doubt that they're worth doing, but you need to make sure that you have a good sense of what you want to do once you've achieved it. Can I just say that if you've got any questions as we're proceeding through this webinar, you are able to actually put questions into the question box. So once you actually do that, we can answer them at the end for you all together. Okay, so now we come on to preparation of your first exam. So this would apply to those who haven't yet taken an exam. For those of you who are involved here and who are watching this webinar and who are in a situation where it's actually an exam resit you're looking to do, that is something that I'll also be covering just after this. So preparing for your first exam, what is the first thing that you should be doing? Step 1. Ensure you are comfortable with the criteria of your chosen exam, whether it's BA4, E1 or F3. You can apply this theory across the board. Remember that you will be tested on your overall knowledge of the module criteria. If you are not confident you understand it as thoroughly as possible, don't book that exam. Whilst it's true that no one well, it's very rare, put it that way, it's extremely rare that people don't get butterflies in their tummy on the day that they're doing an exam. Exams can be very nerve-wracking. We do appreciate that. Don't ever feel that you're not good enough to do it. But equally, if you think, do you know what, I only know half the knowledge of what's in this textbook, but I'll just give it a go, please don't adopt that stance, because you won't actually pass the exam. Do consider that with the objective tests, you need to get 100 out of 150 on a scale score basis to achieve the bare minimum to pass. With the case studies, it's slightly less than that. It's 80 out of 150. But again, it is on a scaled scoring basis. So you need to make sure that you have a good understanding of our modular criteria. If you don't feel that you have it, and if you feel that the study method you're using is just not working for you, that's where I can help you with that. That's where we can offer alternatives. We can look at the different ways that you think that you would actually not only be able to learn from the information, but retain it as well. Now, once you are ready to schedule your exam, I would suggest that you do so well in advance, because research has shown that having a date to work towards will help you structure your revision time. In a way, this is much easier with our case studies because you can only take them in 4 portals throughout the year. Those portals are open for 6 months in advance. So if you're taking an exam, say, in November of next year, you would be able to actually book into that session half a year before that, 6 months in advance of that. So that's because you've got an actual date that you're working towards there, it might arguably be easier for you to prepare for that. With the objective tests, it's different because they're much more flexible and you only need to give 2 working days notice in order to reschedule an exam. The flexibility there is something that our students have lauded us about. They've been extremely excited about the fact that they have such massive flexibility. However, just consider with that though, again, it's a good idea to actually set yourself a plan. You can use our student study planner that's available on our website to actually help you with that. So it's good to just know where you're going, when you need to be there by. But again, the beauty of the flexibility of our exams is if you get to, say that you think, I'm going to do this exam in a month's time. You get there and you think, I've not been able to study the last week. Maybe the kids are not well. Maybe I've had a lot going on at work. I just haven't been able to focus. Don't go in with the mentality of, oh, I'll just give it a bash anyway, because you will not pass that exam. If you need to reschedule it, do so. There's no shame in doing that. That's one of the whole reasons it is so flexible. Utilize what's there for you. Step 3, do make sure you have tried one of the free tutorials to ensure you have an awareness of the scope of the exam. Now, our exams are actually run with Pearson VUE. They actually have over 5,500 centres globally, and you can actually study not just in the UK, but across the world. So regardless of whether you're based in Mumbai, whether you're based in Canberra, whether you're based in Pretoria, whether you're based in Warsaw, there will always be somewhere where you can actually take one of the CIMA exams through the Pearson VUE centres. This applies to the objective tests and the case studies collectively as well, just be clear on that. There are a lot of resources that are available to you, and once again, I can actually give you a personalised study plan, which will involve study resources, articles, things like that, that can actually help in terms of you getting ready and preparing and feeling more confident about taking the exam. these question tutorials that they have on the Pearson View page, though, and I've deliberately included the link there for you, you will find those quite helpful, especially if it's your first exam. The next point, and the final point for preparing for your first exam, bearing in mind that we've considered the importance of choosing the right study method, making sure that you've got a date to work towards, being comfortable with the criteria of the exam, you must consider the importance of time management. One of the main causes of people not being able to pass an exam first time is not a lack of passion or a lack of ability. It's simply not being able to manage the time. Have a sense of awareness of this. Remember that it's 2 hours on the certificate level to actually take our exams. Each exam is 2 hours long on a certificate. When you get to the operational, management and strategic levels respectively, the objective tests are 1.5 hours long each, and the case studies are 3 hours. I appreciate that when you hear this term, 3 hours, it might seem, wow, that's a long time to take an exam. Believe me, especially if you haven't done a case study yet, that time goes very, very quickly indeed. So what you have to really consider with these exams in terms of your preparation is to just ensure that you have a good idea of what to prepare for, and that you've got a good idea of what the methodology is for the exams. The objective tests, it's drag and drop scenarios and multiple choice question and answer scenarios. So although the exams are by no means easy, the method of how they're presented to you is very straightforward. With the case studies, they are much more like a conventional exam in the sense that you will be doing a lot more typing with that. All of our exams are computer-based, meaning that you have to go into proper exam centres to actually sit the exams. You won't, for example, be able to do them from the comfort of home. So, as I say, in order to assess the knowledge and competence of the exam criteria, different methods are used: number entry, multiple choice, drag and drop. So do make sure that you work on that basis, and do make sure that you try your best to have a sense of understanding of what's going to come. Okay, now we come to preparing for an exam resit. The first thing I would say here is try not to be too despondent. Everyone is unsuccessful in an exam from time to time. Do not dwell upon it. The most important thing about falling down is how you rise again. That may sound like an awful cliche, but it is completely true. Never think that you're not good enough for something. Don't think, oh, this is just too hard for me. Everyone can develop and find their way of studying, retaining the information, and working through the syllabus. And again, the student study support team can actually help you with that. The next thing is log into your MySEMA account. You will find a comprehensive breakdown of the areas of proficiency and non-proficiency under the My Exam Results tab. Now, what you need to consider here is you're not going to get a breakdown of, oh, in question 2 I got this wrong, or in question 3 I got that wrong. What we would like you to be able to do is demonstrate that you have a good understanding of the key criteria points within each exam. That way, it won't matter how the questions are framed, you will know the answer instinctively by what it's asking you to do. The danger with having a scenario where you have just straightforward, get this question, get that question, is that the first thing is our questions come from a central bank of questions. So you and your friend could be sitting there in an exam hall, both doing the same exam, and both get completely different questions. Next time that you do the exam, you will find that they won't be the same questions. Yes, it will be based on the same criteria, but that's the key point. You need to know the criteria in order to actually answer the exams questions. One other point I'd make on here is that once you actually complete the exam and once the proficiencies and non-proficiencies are showing, if you'd like some help on sort of going through that, deciphering it, etc., that is something that I can help you with as well afterwards. Now, repeated unsuccessful exam attempts suggest an alternative study method could be the solution. So we've already touched upon this slightly when we talked about the study methods. If you've studied via SEMAstudy.com, yet have not been successful, you may find studying through the textbooks, for instance, more conducive. People can sometimes find themselves in a constant loop where they're using one study method, they're throwing themselves heart and soul at one particular exam, and for whatever reason, they're just not able to get that last bit of data that they need, that last bit of understanding to help them pass. And what I would like to just be very clear on is what I'm aiming for here in terms of helping you with this, in terms of student study support, is not to help you get the bare minimum that you need to pass. It would actually be to help you get a good pass, because what you need to consider is that with our case study exams, 80 out of 150 on a scaled score basis, if you convert that into a percentage, it's actually less than 60%. It's actually only around 56%. So that means that there's almost half the knowledge that's, for whatever reason, it's not coming through there. And that will not help you when it comes to you actually going into the workplace, using your SEMA qualification or your diploma or your certificate of business accounting to get a job with one of our partners. For instance, it could be Disney, Coca-Cola, Google. I'm just naming some of the more famous ones there, of course, but it won't help you in the workplace. So it's always best to make sure that you find the study method that best suits you. I'm deliberately repeating that there just to reinforce how important it is. Use the exam blueprints to see the weighting each slice of criteria is given in a particular exam. For example, the E2 exam is split into 3 areas. Managing people performance is weighted at 40%. Therefore, roughly 40% of the questions in the exam will revolve around this area. You can use this to influence your revision plan. So again, just consider that. One exam might be split into 3, 4, 5 different areas. It will be broken down differently. Other exams, though, it might be just a case of one exam is split into just 2 or 3 areas, as this E2 example clearly shows. In most objective tests, you would get approximately 60 exams. So that means that of those 60 exams, you can be assured that 40% of that is going to revolve around one particular area, which in this case is managing people's performance. So what I would suggest you do is use the blueprint and use the additional support and the information that I'll be able to provide you with to actually work out a study plan for yourself. That will mean that you're actually putting as much focus on those areas that are more heavily weighted. That will be to your advantage when it comes to the exam. Okay, before we move on now to booking and actually rescheduling the exams, there's one other point that I want to make here, which is absolutely imperative. Be mindful of booking and sitting too many practice tests. The old saying is practice makes perfect, but be very wary with that. We actually have an article about the dangers of too many practice tests in the study article section of our website, which I would encourage you to read at a time of your convenience, because the difficulty with too many practice tests, what you need to consider with practice tests is that they're there to supplement your main method of learning. They're not there to replace it. What can start happening is you might buy a bundle of practice tests from X, Y, or Z different tuition provider. And what you actually start finding is all you're doing is remembering the practice test question and then the practice test answer. I've had situations where I've spoken to people on the phone and they've said, oh, in my practice test 3 times in a row, I've got 100%, but then I failed the live exam. Well, what I would say, firstly, is one of the reasons that could be the case is because you're not actually learning the criteria. All you're doing is memorizing a set group of questions and answers. Practice tests are there to give you an idea of what to expect in the exams. They're there to give you examples of different types of questions and the different ways the questions could be put to you. They will in no way, shape or form actually bolster your understanding of the criteria knowledge that you need to pass that exam. So do consider that quite carefully. Now, in terms of booking and rescheduling your exams, if you want to book or reschedule your exams online, you can do so through your MySEMA account. If you want to access exam results, you can see them again in My CIMA. Once again, they will show within 48 hours of you actually taking your objective tests, and after a 6-week period for once you take the case study exams. Alternatively, please call our GEC, which is our Global Engagement Centre, on 0208 849 2251. That's 0044 208 849 2251 between the hours of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday GMT, and my colleagues in the GEC would be delighted to actually help you book your exam over the phone. We're going to be wrapping up this webinar now, so we're going to take a look at some questions that have actually been filtering through. I'm just very conscious that of what time we have left, and your time certainly far more than mine. So if we don't manage to get through all of these now, we will be able to actually answer them afterwards and get a response directly to who has sent this.
So the first question we've got is, does the student support work for people studying on their own, or should one be part of a group?
The whole point of student study support, and I thank you here for that question, is that it is intended to actually help you. Whether you're a part of a group or whether you're studying in a solo basis, the point is your group can't sit your exam for you. We don't have a group exam pathway at all. Everyone has to sit their own exam. So student study support is there to help you as an individual student to actually progress through our syllabus. It's absolutely fine if, say, for example, you and 2 colleagues from work are all studying, say, the BA1 exam together. That's fantastic. It's a great way to bounce ideas off each other and help each other with different study tips. The advice, though, what I would say about this, though, what you need to consider is that student study support provides tailored service. So it would certainly be a case that, say it was 3 of you, that all 3 of you would be given different advice, because one reason that you might be being a bit anxious about an exam, and one reason why a friend may not have passed an exam would be completely different. So again, it's always good to have colleagues and peers to bounce off, but student study support would work best on a personal basis. That's the whole point of this.
So we've got another one from Charles. It's, what is the cost involved for a paper, and is the registration fee different from the fee for the paper exams and registration fees?
Okay, just to be clear on here, you only ever pay one registration fee to be a CIMA student, and regardless of where you are in the world, that would be £77. You would pay that up front. You then would actually pay for the individual exams as you progress through the syllabus. In terms of what the prices are, they are all priced differently. And it also comes down to where you are in the world, because CIMA have actually introduced a tiered system. That means that if you're in particular countries, the price of what you will pay could actually be cheaper or more expensive, depending on where you are and what the exam is that you're actually sitting. In the UK, the certificate level exams, they actually start from £95, and then the exams go up as they work through the structure. But as I say, you will find, depending on where you live, that could potentially be cheaper. But just to reiterate here, you only ever register as a student once. Once you've registered, you then book your exams on a pay-as-you-go basis. You cannot book an exam with CIMA unless you have first registered as a CIMA student.
So we have another question. It's, I've seen in job descriptions, fully qualified accountant required. What level do I need to be?
You would need to have completed our entire syllabus. That means the certificate, operational, management and strategic levels. You would need to have passed them all, and then you would also have needed to have submitted your practical experience and been awarded the CGMA designation. You could only class yourself as a full accountant once you've completed the whole syllabus.
Another one is, how can we access videos?
This will depend what videos you're actually looking for, and in regards to what resources you're looking for. If it's a case of different handy videos, things like that, what I can actually do is tailor something to your requirements. So if it's because it may not be one video gives an example that fits everyone. If you want to know somewhere where you can see webinars, things like that of this nature that would give you information, our webinars page would be the place to go for that. Our events page would also be very helpful. But in terms of if it was, say, a video of what's an example of how I can do this or how can I understand that, you'll find information like that on the study planner and also on the study articles section of our website. In study resources, I beg your pardon, study resources.
How do you assess whether this program is really for you?
What I would suggest is that you actually just take a look at our main website, take a look at and think, what is it that you actually want to do? This is the absolutely key point. The great thing about the CIMA qualification is that the skills it teaches you are transferable. Whereas financial accounting is quite esoteric and tends to focus on auditing, taxation and bookkeeping, management accounting is a much broader basis. It covers forecasting, strategy, profit. It's about seeing where the business is going as well as what's come before. As I've touched upon this already, a number of people who've actually qualified with CIMA actually don't go on, even though they're fully qualified management accountants, they go on to do other roles. They might be a finance director, they might be an HR business manager, they might work in IT. There are lots of different roles that they would actually be able to work in because the skill set is quite broad. So what I would say to that is see what it is you actually want to do. What kind of career path are you looking for? If it's a case of, I know I want to do something in business, I want to do something in management, maybe I want to do something with consultancy, CIMA can help with that. If you were to say, though, I want to be an auditor, that is not something that our syllabus will cover, and you won't be able to audit with this. So we would recommend that you look at one of the other IFAC bodies or one of the other big accounting bodies that might be able to help.
And the final question we have is, what level is the diploma in the UK?
So the certificate level would be the equivalent of the first 6 months to a year of a full degree. The diploma itself, so the diploma in management accounting would be the equivalent to just beneath a degree, and the advanced diploma would be the equivalent of just higher than a degree. So the way to look at it is the diploma would be for an undergraduate, the advanced diploma would be for an actual graduate. Okay, we also here have a poll question, and that would be just to ask if you wanted to be contacted after this. If you want to get more information, if you'd like to arrange for a comprehensive one-to-one where I can actually discuss your situation, put together a study plan just for your situation, we can have a conversation about that. The poll is open now. Okay, so if you want to be contacted by CIMA Student Study Support, all you need to do is select the yes box that you'll see on the left-hand side. Okay. Okay, right. Well, I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody for participating in this webinar today. I hope you found it helpful. It's in no way meant to replace your main methods of study. It's not going to in itself be providing you with a means that you're just going to now fly through an exam. It's simply been intended to raise awareness as to what student study support can actually do to help you get through your exams, and to also just let you know that there is someone there that is actually able to guide you, to help you, to give you that additional support. Okay, so thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you everyone for participating in today's webinar. We would be grateful if you could take a few moments to give us your feedback, and I will send a link in the chat box now for you. Following on from this webinar, we will send you a copy of the link along with the recording. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.